Hello, everyone. And welcome, Isaac, to our Fabric Up podcast. So, just shortly, our guest for this edition is Isaac Souweine. Am I pronouncing it
That was
correctly?
good. Wait.
Yeah. With whom we're going to talk about product development and we're going to talk about experimentation. So, you feel comfortable with these topics?
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Some of my favorite topics. Absolutely.
So I'm pretty sure not just at this level, people will know already that the conversation will be great. So for people that don't know you, you are partner at Real Ventures, and your focuses, and tell me if it's still true, to early stage investment in the Montreal-based company.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And also have been very involved in our acceleration platform, Founder Fuel,
Mhm.
which is also very early stage, working across Canada, and also our student VC platform called Front Row Ventures, where we're
Mhm.
empowering students to make the investments in their peers. And the continuity between all of that is very early stage investing, first check, backing companies at the very start and helping them to develop products.
Not just be a chicken, but be a pig a little bit in the story, right?
Absolutely. I'll take that analogy. Sure.
So thank you for being with us today. Um, do you want to introduce yourself with your own words, just to give the audience a little bit of a background, who you are, and why talking about experimentation makes sense other than VCs, but more like on the field, like what is your experience
Sure.
there? Yeah.
No, I'd be happy to. Based in Montreal now, originally from the US, from the East Coast, and actually got involved in technology really by chance. I was studying religion and philosophy in undergrad. Some friends started a company during the dot-com boom. They convinced me to join. I left school for a while and sort of discovered the technology world through working for this one startup.
So a lucky discovery, a lucky one.
Very lucky, like absolutely. But you never know. You put yourself out there, and I think mostly you have to be willing to say yes. And I left school and separated from my cohort. I had to go to tell my parents, like, hey, I'm going to take a break. So you just have to be willing to take a little bit of risk. And this
Mhm.
put me into the technology world, and I ended up building a career in product management, around really not around anything except that myself, and around this one experience in a startup. But you kind of build up, and did it for a bunch of years in New York, mostly at a publishing company called Scholastic, which is doing mostly books, but we did ed tech
Mm.
and software and games for kids. So learned there, ended up moving to Singapore with my now wife. I think we had just gotten married when we moved, and spent 6 years in Singapore, did an MBA at INSEAD, spent many years at Yahoo in a mix of product marketing and product management. So got exposure to how these things happen at very big internet companies, and then moved back into the startup world through an organization called Pollinizer out of Australia that was doing really, really early stage. And that's where I learned Wizard of Oz and Lean Startup and all of that stuff. Made it to Montreal, kept doing product management at Frank and Oak. I think we're going to talk about them today, which is a omni-channel retailer, at Sonder, which is a hospitality company. And these were companies that had been backed by Real Ventures, and eventually got involved on the investment side. So that's really the very brief history. And product management is, well, I think many product managers are kind of self-taught. It's not a discipline, as certainly when I got into it, that had a lot of structure around it.
I was about to ask a question. Looks like you learned a lot by doing. Do you think
Yeah,
you can teach that, or it's
you
really
can.
difficult? Yeah. Yes.
Now, I'm involved, for example, in bringing this associate product management program to Montreal, which was a program launched in Toronto, and that program is itself sort of inspired by the associate product management programs at Google and Facebook and LinkedIn. And you can think of those as sort of practicum style programs where you're
Mhm.
doing product management, but you come and you read theory and you develop, learn frameworks. So it can be taught. It's a it's a diverse skill set, but it can be taught. And like many of these skills, it's probably best to learn it by doing. But you can take courses now. And if you look at, say, the MBA programs, the leading MBA programs, now they have concentrations in product management. So it is a discipline. And I think it's probably much easier to learn it today. Plus, now in the internet era, you have Twitter and you have LinkedIn and you have blogs and you have conferences and you have YouTube. So
there's more tools.
There's more tools, there's more information, there's more consensus, there's communities. So it was probably a little bit harder back then, but on the other hand, there was less competition to get the jobs. Now everybody wants to be a product manager. So for sure, there's stuff you can learn, but you better at some point to get out there and do it if you wanna learn it.
And one of the barrier we have is when we give best practices, we name Google, we name Netflix, we name these huge corporate. And the people are like, yeah, but we cannot do what they are doing. And we are trying to tell them, no, you can. They started small. They started small and they make smart moves. Yes, they were backed by big players, but still in their world, it's pretty aggressive, so they have to fight for it. So how you get involved, you talk about Australia, you talk about some program, but how you get involved into believing that, okay, experimentation will be the way to go, and this is the best way to learn, and how you apply it in your
well, I'll go back to my time at Pollenizer, which was this really unique model where they were trying to kind of create companies. You could call it a venture studio, which you see a little bit more now, but and so they were really thinking a lot about how to do product management and how to do company creation, because it wasn't, entrepreneurs, they just go, oh, I want to make this happen, and then they make a lot of mistakes and hopefully it goes well. Whereas
they have good ideas.
They have good ideas, but this company sort of specialized in doing it, and this was at the time when the lean startup, Eric Ries's really famous book had come out, and you had Ash Moria, who was writing about the lean method, and Steve Blank, who was Eric Ries's teacher at Stanford. And so these people were starting to codify these ideas about iteration, about learning cycles, and let's say roughly applying the agile methods that the engineers had already figured out to the business and marketing and product side, because that is what lean startup is.
With the idea of speeding up process, just because you learn faster.
There you go, speeding up process, and also let's say increasing humility and recognizing.
Why you say that?
Well, the thing is, it's very likely, I don't want to say very likely, but it's quite possible that your idea is not exactly right. Who knows what part of it is wrong? Maybe it's the UX, maybe the core idea is just totally wrong and it's never going to work. It's not because people are not smart. It's more because the world is very, very complicated, and what's inside of users' minds and what they will respond to, you just never know. And I mean, even you could survey your users and they say, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. And you could go deliver them that and they don't even like it. You're like, but you said that you wanted it. And likewise, you could ship them something that they never said that they wanted. And they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. So humans are complicated. Product development is complicated. It's all very uncertain. And in face of uncertainty, one thing you can do to lower risk is just shrink the cycle time. And if you think about waterfall, which was the, now people kind of scoff at waterfall product development, and I mean, it's still applicable in certain areas, but at the time, that was everything. It was just write a spec for a year, and the villain here was Microsoft, right? Rolling out Windows 95 and 98, and look how long it takes them, and it's still not even that great, and blah blah blah. And so,
and do you know how you get rich, Bill Gates, with this model? With the because the way he did it is when you sell a computer, you have a DOS license. And the way he managed it, he wanted to deal with the company, IBM, I think, and IBM refused to make the deal. And then he said, okay, so I will take the rights of it. So now you just make money out of every computer that have dust on it. So it's just like running money in in the pocket without doing anything.
Very,
It's
very
just smart the way business model is done.
good business model, and they rolled out some great products. And so this is
Yes.
not about like bashing Microsoft, but anyway, this this notion that you could just take on less. You know what I mean? Like, instead of specking 6 months of engineering work, spec 6 weeks. Instead of specking a month worth of work, spec a week's worth of work. What's the smallest version of thing that you could ship and put it in front of customers? Because while customers may or not be right when they tell you what they want, by definition, they're always right when they act, because you put it in front of them. It's like, do you want to eat this food? Like, here you go. You're either going to eat it
Yeah.
or you're not going to eat it.
Oh
And
yeah,
now
I'm
we'll
gonna
know for
eat
sure.
vegan. I'm gonna eat kale all day, and then yeah, it tastes okay. Make it better because just like this, maybe not. You know?
So there you go. So I think like these ideas, when I came out of Yahoo, which was different, was waterfall, it was big specs, and it had to be because it's such a big organization. I learned a lot that the guys who were running it, Phil Morrill and Mick Lebinskis at the time, and Phil, now doing Deep Tech VC, they were really into it. And we were actually out there, on the one hand, applying these methods like in the startups that we were building, and then we were also like teaching these methods. We would run courses and seminars for big corporates who wanted to know, how do the startups think, and how do they go so fast, and how do they disrupt. And so we were doing the theory and the practice. I learned a lot there. And so that was a nice transition point. And then when I came to Montreal and started working at Frank and Oak, and maybe this will be a segue, well, you just see at that point it's the best way. Like, why should I take on any more than I have to? Like, find the smallest bit of hypothetical value. Like, I think we can ship this value to the user. Okay, what's the smallest version of it? Okay, let's get a spec and momentum around that. And you can see, like, the smaller it is, look at all these people you have to convince. You got to convince marketing, you got to convince the founders, you got to convince the dev team, you got to get design. So like the smaller it is, the easier it is to get it through. And it also forces you to think about, like, what is the essence of this product? Like if we have nothing else, what is the MVP of this? And we talk about MVP for like for new products, but companies are shipping MVPs all the time, right? Because every feature is kind of like a new MVP. Like, hey, what's the minimum viable, or you call it an MVF, minimum viable feature? And you
At
just
some point,
realize, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but at some point we had like a version that we called MVP number 2, and then we said, but let's be honest, it's MVP number 100 or something like that. Just because we didn't name them MVPs, but in reality, but people don't see that. People don't see all these small actually version. Why do you think it's so difficult? And I want to can get back to Eric Rice, that I think at some point he's pretty arrogant, confident, and he said, give me anything you're doing, I can reduce that by 50 times, make it 50 times smaller. So it looks like it's something that he learned, or maybe he just, I'm believe in growth mindset. So is it because you become really, really good at making things smaller and detect where the essence is? Why do you think people at the beginning have a lot of difficulty to take a big idea and just make it small? Where is the challenge? Maybe there's more than one. There's more than one.
I think people learn that you learn how to get an A in class. Like you learn what are the rules of the game, and then you try to play by those rules. And when I came up in product management, the rules were more around waterfall. And so then you're not disrupting a system like that and changing that. It does take someone to come in from the outside. Like most people, if you say, well, look, this is how we develop products, they're not going to ask like deep questions about how they do it. They're going to say, okay, cool. Well, what's a great spec look like? And like, how do I win this game? And I think, like, why were people playing those games? Maybe a lot of different factors, but but for sure, one, like on the I'm going to go for the emotional or behavioral factor, like coming in and saying, I don't know if this is really going to work or not, and having that, like treating it as a hypothesis
Mhm.
and as an experiment. That's, you can see how that's sort of like, wait, you don't know if it's going to work. Like, I thought I thought you were the product manager. I thought you knew what our
Yeah,
customers
you are the
wanted.
expert. You are the expert.
So that's an interest. Now that's the right mindset, but it's pretty, from that perspective, it's sort of easy how to see how someone
Mhm.
might be attracted to the other mindset, which is like, I do know this is going to work. You can count on me. And that's why we're going to write this huge spec. And I've really thought about it. And so there's something attractive about, the waterfall method. We've thought about what we need. We're going to spec it out. We're going to
Yeah,
ship it.
we like to plan. We like to plan. It's easier. It's less stress. Remove the stress. This is what is going to happen, but it's not what happened in real life. And you experience it a little bit with Frank and Oak. And I don't know exactly when you jump in, so I don't know if you
I
can
can I
tell.
can tell you when, and I'll just say one other thing about, but about
Yeah.
how, because it's coming to me from thinking about it. Software, which is what we're talking about building, either software, or Frank and Oak has clothing, but it's like a software enabled company. The level of flexibility and the ease of shipping a new version of the product, especially in the cloud era, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But that was not true of the products that came before software. And honestly, before cloud distribution, it wasn't even necessarily true of software. When I worked at Scholastic, we
Mhm.
would ship CDs to the schools and they would load them on their servers. And when we improved the product, we would have to ship them a new version of the
Ah,
CD,
yeah.
and they would load this 1.1 version and this 1.2 version. Well, and if you think that's sort of time consuming, imagine shipping a new car or another physical process. Like, it only happens once a year, right? There's no
Mhm.
like point releases on the
Custom
2021.
maintenance and the cost of
It doesn't
updating,
exist.
increasing, it's too much.
Like, if you screwed up your airbag in your 2021 Range Rover, you're calling back the Range Rover to the dealers all around. So you're going to go waterfall and you're going to get that spec really great, and then you're going to QA it. So software enables this level of
Mm.
flexibility, of iteration. And I think it maybe took a little bit of time for people to realize that they were basically, and here I'm sort of speculating on the history of product development, but it's like they were using these industrial models where it's like you design a product, you create the product, you QA the product, you ship the product, but it wasn't necessarily, and it wasn't necessary anymore. And once you see that you have this flexibility, you go, oh wow.
Mhm.
Because like for every product you ship in the industrial model, like either it works or it flops completely, and it's sort of like it's a very binary outcome. So I think those are some of the reasons uh why people did it a different way, and kind of like how it evolved. In terms of Frank and Oak, I joined at a, I mean, it's always an interesting time with these companies, but it was a very interesting time. They had raised, I think, like a small Series A round. So they'd done two rounds of financing. Um, the company was on fire, growing very, very quickly. Like the model was really, really working. Like they had, even gotten past their early adopters. There was like some significant hype around the company. We were moving a lot of product,
And
meaning these
why do you
clothes.
think? Why do you think it was that? Because the product was good. Because they were good entrepreneur. Because they were back. Because can you tell a little bit based
Yeah.
on your
So
your
I mean,
opinion?
I wasn't there for the first rounds, but I have obviously some hypotheses here. So first of all, Frank and Oak started out as ModaSuite, and ModaSuite was a competitor to Indochino. So they were doing made to order suits, and for whatever reason that model was not working out. So Frank and Oak was a pivot, and it was my understanding is that the company was, it was like in a bit of a tight spot when they pivoted. And as a result, I think they actually when the team is down by 20 runs or whatever, 20 points, like you start to take more risks because like you got to come up with something. So I think they were like quite fearless in the pivot. So they needed to come up with something new and different and just be like a little bit wild with it. Mm-hmm. And what they came up with was this, direct to consumer brand with a real Montreal hipster swaggering style.
That's never gonna work. It's crazy.
And like and there was no in consumer products, like you got to be like, if you've got a little something different, if you've got some swagger, if you've got some style, if you've got something new, either people are going to say this sucks or they're going to say this is awesome, this is the next thing. So I remember looking at their first landing pages and whatever, and they were like, they were sassy and they were kind of like different and they were edgy. And if you remember, this is like 2011, 12, 13. This is like hipster had gone from like this kind of like, Williamsburg, whatever, it had started to reach like the masses, like everyone was aware of the hipster vibe. But not everyone could like do the hipster vibe, right? But they knew that it was out there, and the plaid and the Pabst Blue Ribbon and the whole thing. And so these guys like, and this was Mile End at its height. So you have this like center of like real live hipsterism turned into a brand that had a real personality. So I think the brand was actually the number one thing. Like they had the right brand and the right product, which
they didn't just see the trends, they
were the trend. If you went into that office, I was, and it was so cool for me. I had moved from Singapore to Montreal, and I show up in this office, and I'm like, holy, like you guys are legit, meaning like you are the thing that you say other people should be. So it was completely authentic. Right. It came from the heart. It was a bunch of young, mostly guys, express, and at the time it was just for men. Now Frank and Oak is men and women, but at the time it was like, hey young men, kind of like 20 and 30 something men, we know what you want.
So start small, your market, get one market first,
very
understand
targeted
it, and then I try to.
And so they had a really well expressed brand. They had a product which is basically like mid-range shirts, like pants too, but shirts was the thing, which was the right price point for their market. They're charging like $50, $40. So it's like a little bit better than H&M level quality, but not like, it was within the reach. You're talking about people who have their first, second, third job. They don't have tons and tons of money. They want to look good, but they don't want to pay a mint for it. So they had the right brand, the right product, meaning price point and look.
Do you know if they tested the pricing point? Because it's a really important part of testing when you build product and then you want to start looking at your business model, like, okay, let's experiment some pricing.
I think when times are tight and when they're doing this pivot, like you don't necessarily have that much time to test. I was not there when they rolled it because I came a little bit after, but they were like, great shirts for under $50. Like, that sounds good, right? So like, I actually think they knew their consumer well enough, because you don't have to, this is delicate because you should test, but on the other hand, if then you don't have to test. So I think they knew, or they got lucky or whatever. So they had the right price point, right product, right brand. And this is very important, they had a go-to-market, which was the Hunt Club. They had this loyalty program, which functioned basically like, I don't know if all of your listeners or you will remember a BMG and Columbia House, which were these CD companies where they said, look, we're going to send you a CD once a month. This is when I was growing up. and we're going to send it to you unless you tell us not to. And we're going to like charge you $10. And so it's a little bit, it's like a slightly tricky user experience. So Frank and Oak had come up with something like that. They say like,
it's a little bit evil design, but just
a slightly evil design is what it is. And what it did was it got people buying on a regular basis, number one. which is hard. It's very hard to get men to shop more than once or twice a year. And we had them shopping 4, 5, 6 times a year. This is all started before I came. So I take no credit for this.
So that's a great data. When you have recurrence,
we see it. You could see it. You would come, you would show it to the retail people, and they'd be like, I don't know what you guys are doing here, but you have cracked the code, because men don't shop like this, and you have them shopping. And it happened once a month. They had a drop model, basically, like what works.
Is it because they reach a new demographic, or is it just because it clicked?
It was I think these kind of marketing tactics, they can be applied anywhere, or not, right? So I think of it more like, it's not like that was the perfect tactic for that demographic. It was, but more it's like the brand was perfect for the demographic, the product was perfect for the demographic, and then they pulled together these little sort of tricks that like I said, it worked for BMG and Columbia House, and there are many other people who run loyalty schemes of one version or another. So I wouldn't say that it's more perfect for these, like, young hipsters to have this, but it worked for them, and it created regularity. And I will say the drop model, because remember what they did is they would say every month, I should say what we did, every month, new clothes every month. A drop. Now that works well for young people. Older people could care less, but like young people want the new thing, the new hip thing, and we're going to drop it. And for 5 days, only you and the Hunt Club can shop it. And by the way, we're going to like charge you $50 if you don't come and click on this thing. So that was just this like slightly evil but effective technique. Anyway, that particular mix of the Hunt and Hunt Club, by the way, Hunt Club, remember, hipsters were really into this like hunting imagery and stag horns and old style barbershops and all that stuff. So
it's about exclusivity. There's something about status, about being in the group, So yeah, it's
all
really
that
powerful.
stuff was very powerful.
Let's go back to men, woman, like psychic.
It was perfect. So that mix. So there you go. That was the business. Was the Hunt Club getting people to shop on a regular basis for this particular, pants, shirts, mostly shirts and some pants. And I'll just say the last thing, which is so great about, well, I thought it was so great and also slightly evil about the drop model. We were not sourcing product on a monthly basis. It doesn't work that way. We were sourcing product, meaning designing, sending the designs, and getting them shipped back on a seasonal basis like everybody else. We would just chop it up into 3 months and drop 1 month and the other. So that's right. Like you're doing what everybody else is doing on the sourcing side. So we were not like Zara or anybody where we were doing real-time sourcing. We were doing year lead time sourcing, but we were delivering it to the end user in a slightly different way. So anyway, that was
more flexible way, you will say.
Apparently more flexible, but not actually more flexible. Like it's not like we still had all that inventory. Like we had bought it all. If the October drop didn't go well, like it's not like we would just have to liquidate it to TJ Maxx like everybody else, or Winners. So not really more flexible. It was a more appealing to the end user, because they go, oh, it's October. What does Frank and Oak have this month? And so there you go. So that was when I joined. Maybe they'd raised $5 million. Company was absolutely blowing up and had a ton of momentum.
And it becomes data oriented in a way that you want to build recommendation, you want to put AI on top of that, and then you want to learn from customers. And Shopify was not around at the time, so you had to build a little bit by yourself. But is it worth it to build and all these software development? Because Frank and Oak, like you said, it's a retail business, but like all business now, digitalization comes, and you have to somehow manage to put into your business model like technology one way or the other. And so Frank and Oak wanted to put like AI, they wanted to recommendation. And so how you de-risk that? How you say, okay, so let's not just pretend we can do, let's look at what we have in the inventory, what we can see, what we can try. So how you manage all these uncertainties.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And the first thing that I'll say is, um, when I got there, there were actually some projects going around that. So exactly as you say, everyone wants to take it to the next level and do recommendations and stuff. And there were some cool ideas circulating within the company. There was also the core business, which is get someone to go on the website, click, buy, get the order to go to the warehouse, ship it out on a timely basis, take in a return if there is a return, get that backlisted. So this is basic e-commerce, was under massive strain from the growth, because no one thought it would grow that much. So every single thing which I described, which sounds like pretty easy, hey, Shopify, whatever. And we were on Magento, but let's just say we had done a lot of modifications to the version of Magento that we were on to facilitate the kind of things that we wanted to do with the Hunt Club. And that made it very hard to manage. And this was a much earlier time of Magento. And we had, young sort of like the flip side. Remember I said, like, they just took a swing and came up with a brand and came up with a model, and it was very fast moving and it was intuitive. Well, that same mindset will create a lot of tech debt and a lot of, challenges. So on the one hand, we had a company that wanted to like roll out cool AI and stuff like that. On the other hand, just fulfilling the orders. And we had our model, which would get people, like, most of the purchases happened in the first 5 days of the month. So now you're talking about an incredible strain on the logistics system, because you're pumping, like, we used to do multiple $100,000 of purchases on a single day. And then you're running all those orders through your, and we're operating our own warehouse, and we have our
becomes
own
a capacity problem at some point.
Major capacity. So in the end, when I came, mostly my first year was actually killing innovation projects. Like, we don't have time for that. And working on plumbing.
Which is really agile, really agile. Like, if we have 5 projects in the same time, well, we'll take maybe the first one will get value, but the last one will get value at the end. We didn't learn from each of these projects, and so all the value, and you cannot learn and go faster.
Yeah. So exactly. So we did a lot of boring, like fixing internal stuff and fixing up Magento and working on the warehouse management system and just trying to make sure that people
Thanks
got
for
there.
saying that. Thanks for saying that you did boring stuff, because
and you have to do it. And if people are not, I remember my first Christmas there, let's just say the customer service list was very, very long. Like, we had a lot of issues in the business that we had to address. And so that was actually the focus. At a certain point, you do turn your eyes towards innovation projects. And also, people did catch up with us. Like, so the growth of Frank and Oak when I came, actually, it did not last forever at that pace. And the things that we did, our brand, our price point, our product mix, were somewhat copyable. Unfortunately, other people could and did bring out that kind of product at that kind of price point. And so that put us under more pressure to come up with new engines of growth, because we were no longer the only, like, hipster shirt company on the block. And
there's a market for one company, the other ones, there's a market there.
They come immediately. And I'm talking about the big guys like J. Crew, and I'm talking about the Bonobos and everybody. And there's a lot of people who play in this market. So when we looked for innovation, there's a whole other story about what we did about the Hunt Club, but I'm going to focus, because I know you want to talk about experimentation. So one thing that had happened during these 2 or 3 years was the rise of these personal shopper recommendation style e-commerce models. Trunk Club being the big one on the men's side, which sold to Nordstrom's. Stitch Fix being big on the women's side, and being the epic success, honestly, of that whole generation of e-commerce companies. So we had long been kicking around, how do we do recommendations, and how do we do personal shopping, and how do we make that part of our product mix? And
So
we ended up,
observe, there's a trend, is going there. Inspection, okay, so what we're gonna do about it, and what do we have inside the company, and our strength, and can we use the data? Do we have data?
yeah, there you go. That's
adaptation.
it.
What happened next?
And I'll just say, you do that partially because you want to stay on the edge, but partially because you have to. Like, if your core model is working, you don't mess with it. But here we needed to find some innovation. Well, what happened was simply you say like, and now you go back to these principles we're talking about of lean startup and experimentation. You say like, well, how quickly can we ship some version of this product, right? Because you can imagine the epic version of this product where it's all AI and it takes in all of this data and it picks the exact, pants just for you and all of that stuff. But you got to start smaller. And so on the, first of all, we have all these customer service people. We had an amazing customer service team, like amazing. Like the people on the line, Roger Mecca, who's now at Vention, who's like running it. These people knew our products so well. They were just very creative, sharp. They were always come up with product ideas and always solving problems for people. So we had this amazing workforce. So we're like, all right,
this is a big asset that a lot of companies are not using.
Huge. And we had in-house, so they were really felt like, sometimes customer service is like on another planet or in another building, but they were all right next to us. They're amazing people. And so we're like, all right, you're our personal shoppers, like, because who else, right? And we have this, and this gives you like an opportunity. And then we just say, well, can we build some kind of personal shopping system inside of Magento? Like, can we, because that's our back end. And at the time we had a lot of great developers. We had this one developer who's still a developer in Montreal named Dak Chartrand, and incredible developer. Like, and so he's like, I got it, you know what I mean? And we had designers and stuff out there working, but it was me, him, and a couple of other people, and we're like, well, so what does it take to create a little quiz for these people, like ask them some questions, the people who want to try this out, and then we're going to take those answers, and we're going to like push those answers into the back end, and it's going to show up as a somehow in the Magento backend for the customer service, and they're going to look at these answers, and they're going to, and then I'm just remembering this all as we talk about it. We had a system. We had already created the system for customer service reasons that if necessary, the customer service people could log in as a user,
okay,
to see, because something's wrong with their account or whatever. So we're like, hey, let me just log in as you. And okay. So we're like, well, we already have that system. So when people make this order and we have their credit card on file, we're just going to use that same system, read their quiz, log in as them, manually add the clothes to their cart, click, set, there you go. Now you have a personal shopping system, and you haven't hired any new staff. You've kind of used your same new staff. You haven't made any significant changes to your back end, because you're really just sort of sending surveys and sending kind of text fields into your Magento. So you're not messing with really how
the experience is there.
For the end user, they're like, oh, cool. like clothes are coming to my door that I didn't order, because that's the experience. Later, you're going to have more thing, and you're going to have messaging with your personal shopper and such and such. But like at the start, it's just like, oh yeah, some clothes showed up at my door, and I think we probably adjusted the like the transaction not adjusted, but we did it as an authorization. So we didn't charge you $750. We just authorized your card for $750, and then we will charge you for what you keep. So it was very down and dirty, and we were able to ship that feature relatively quickly when we decided that we wanted to ship it. Like I want to say in less than a quarter, the whole thing was up and running.
And so you start getting feedback, what people like, and then I can imagine how fun it was for people shopping and trying to make the mix. So I guess you bring back the energy into the team, what the feature is about. And as a product owner, often people that take care of product, they want to give vision, they want to give like, and then if people see this data entry and they start interacting with the customers, selling a features becomes a lot easier to the team after. Like, yeah, you see.
I think the team had the customer service team loved it because they were like, kind of bored of just solving problems. I think there was early adopters. We had a big community around the company, so early adopters were down to try it out. So I think they had fun. I think the features like that in the short run don't move the needle, and they only move the needle if you really put the weight of the company behind them. So I think I think that was probably the hardest part is shipping this experiment, showing people that it had promise. First of all, that it could be done, that it had some advantages for certain types of customers, but that it probably would not be a silver bullet for growth in the company. That so it was successful in some ways, but I think we saw
it's not the big idea that will like,
or maybe if it is, it will
something.
take like this could become a big tree right now, but like don't get your hopes up. And in the end, for the record, like this, I think we did some good work on that project and we learned a lot. In the end, it didn't become the growth engine. And I think eventually sort of, kind of died on the vine. And then they came up, this was after I left, but they came up with other versions of it, which I would say are more, that less personal shopper and more just like traditional loyalty, like, hey, buy 3, get the 4th free, something like that. That was Style Plan, which I wasn't there, so I don't remember. So this is not about experimentation, but more about product strategy. Our DNA was not in personal shopping, was not in pushing product directly to the customer. Unlike Trunk Club, unlike Stitch Fix, our DNA was actually traditional e-commerce. Come to the website, look at stuff that you might like, and buy it. Now, we had some interesting mechanisms around that made it feel a little bit more like something else. But at the end of the day, and Hunt Club, it was like you can put 5 things in your crate, but you put the 5 things there. That was so you were still doing the shopping, and change. That's a big change.
It's a risky because some people can say, well, I don't want people to put things in and choose for me. And you can see designer will say, no, don't go there. And other people, no, I think they can go there. Well, let's try. Let's see if they like it. Let's put in experiment.
So there you go. And mostly it was not necessarily what people had come to expect from us. That doesn't mean you can't change what you do, but it was not core to our DNA. And we were not all in. And this is, by the way, the sort of the challenge of experimentation. It's easy to start. It's also easy to quit. So you go like, oh, this experiment has gone okay, but we haven't like crushed it. So now what? Like, do we keep investing? Because we see it's going to be hard. And so, with all in bets, you go, oh, well, we have to do it.
And humans are so good at finding excuses after if you didn't put a number before doing it. Let's say you do a campaign and you say, you know what, we're going to increase our sale by 30%. Well, if you have 20%, you failed. You
So
didn't reach what you
there you go.
wanted, but
Yeah.
you put this number. So, and then some actually people say, well, how I know how to choose a number? Well, the first time, try a number. And if you're off by 50%, ask yourself, oh, why I'm off like by 50%? And after, and then I think you talked about it, like the intuition that Frank and Oak have at some point. I don't like to call it like chance. It's just by doing stuff and talking to people, you start getting like information, feedback, and then you make sense of this information, right?
Yeah, no, it's all well said. And if you look at the two intuitions behind the company, the first intuition, and I'm projecting here, and by here I mean like this like mid-range price point, hipster fun community e-commerce company. I think that was totally authentic to the group behind the company. Like, this is really, they came up with it. They thought it was a great idea. They shipped it to the world, and the world was like, yes, we agree. This is loads of fun. The second intuition around, personal shopping and that sort of thing, it wasn't really our intuition. It was our competitors or other people in the space. And we're like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe we can make that work. And so it was not coming up from deep inside. And it was somewhat of a defensive move because we were looking for new engines of growth that would kind of step in for some of the stuff that was tailing off a little bit. So now you never know, like, that's not the reason it didn't work or whatever, but it is complicated. And I think, that the lean startup is awesome. And now it just is how people develop products. So it's not even like it's in the water now.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side of experimentation is intuition in a way. Like, I don't know why, but I just think this is going to work. And intuition is super important for generating great products.
But it's okay. If you say that, it's okay. The only thing is, I don't know why, but it's going to work. So do it, team, versus I don't know why, but I think it's going to work. How we can validate it. Like,
absolutely.
So this is where you put your vulnerability on the side. I don't know. Like, you start with this, like, I don't know, but let's try to figure it out.
I like that. It's the marriage of it really is the marriage of intuition and experimentation that makes great product development. But I think sometimes it's easy in the data-driven era to sort of undervalue intuition and like, because the classic intuitive product leader is Steve Jobs, right? He's like, I got it. This is the thing. And he was like, he was right often. He was wrong sometimes, but he was right often. And so then when people come off and play that game, like, I've seen it happen, people go, well, like, do you think you're Steve Jobs? Like, like, we don't, you're not, buddy. And like, show me the data. And it's like, well, actually, fair. But on the other hand, hopefully your product manager does have a little Steve Jobs in him or her and does have some key insights. That doesn't mean she should just impose them upon people. And he was probably a little bit of the impose it on people type. But it is both. And it goes back to one of the points I made earlier. Humans are very complex. These products and services that we bring to market are incredibly complex. So sometimes the way to cut through the complexity is not through data, it's through intuition. It's just, you know what, like, I've got a feeling, and as you say, let's see if it works.
Just to transform, there's a process to transform it. And maybe I see time's running up, and so we talk about Frank and Oak, but it was a couple of years ago. Then you did a lot of different things, and then you learn a lot of different things about it. Experimentation. So I guess you bring, because this is one thing we say to people, like, do experiment. You will learn by the volume, and at some point you will your intuition will get better and better. So do you have a project where you bring this intuition and this experimental framework to develop new product?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, as I said, lean startup is sort of the way that people work now. So we see it all the time in our startups. So tons, and this isn't so much us being like, hey, did you know this is how you should do it? It's more like, they get it, right? Like, they're all practitioners. But one that came up recently, and not our idea, but I was like so pleased to see it, and the investment group behind this this company, so was really excited about this experiment. So I'll tell you about it quickly. The company is called YPC, Your Personal Chef. It's a robotic.
It's not your personal shopping. It's your personal
it's
chef.
your personal chef, and it's a huge robotic kitchen sort of kiosk with an arm that swings around and all these appliances. And the goal is that it will one day soon be able to cook like more than 100 meals an hour, which is the equivalent of what a mini kitchen could do. And it uses these thermomixes, these sort of like crazy Cuisinart devices to cook all sorts of different stuff. Really cool robotics, sort of cutting edge food robotics. And they've been, on the one hand, trying to make this robot work, and on the other hand, like, okay, who's gonna buy it? And
feasibility, desirability.
Yeah, and so we've had all these different hypotheses, and including cafeterias and restaurants and ghost kitchens and all this stuff. But then there's this other hypothesis around basically opening up kind of our own little mini food kiosks and serving condos as a benefit for the condo or just direct to the consumer. And there's aspects of this technology that allow you to do it right on site in a way that wouldn't be possible to have a full kitchen. And so to test this hypothesis right now, this is happening as we speak. This team up at Fabric 8 in near Jean Talon Market is they've got like 3, 4, 5 families, and they're just feeding them on a nightly basis, or they come in and they they did a direct mail, 200 doors, put the thing under the door. Who's interested in this product? Kitchen Club. It will cost you, like whatever, $50 a month or a week. I don't know the pricing, and you'll be able to order once a week. And
but not necessarily free, because
it's not free. No, it costs
when
money.
You give a service for free, after that you try to sell it, and people like the service, they don't want to pay for it. So
it absolutely costs money, and they found these 2 or 3 families, and now they're ramping it up slowly. And they cook for them, and they sometimes use the robot to cook for them, and sometimes they actually cook by hand dishes that they know the robot will one day be able to cook. So it's a mix of using the robot and then manual cooking, and they package it up. And I'm talking about like the CEO and the CRO
I love it.
cook the food and walk it up to these people, so they're directly interfacing with the customers. And it's powerful, and it is a form of validation that is like really meaningful, even though the scale of the revenue is, we're talking hundreds of dollars here. The learning they're getting from the customers, the validation, and these are things that not only inform the product development process, they not only inform the sort of business strategy, like it's really validating the fact that we could go direct to consumer, and we can even take that and show it to condo people and say, hey, it's only a few people, but we're actually doing this. It's real. And we're not fundraising now, but we will be soon again. That's what you show the investors. You say, look, it's just a small test.
Yeah.
But imagine this at scale. And investors' job is to imagine it at scale. So
you talk about MVPs, and actually MVPs is not something you will scale. The idea, you can scale it, but not the way you deliver this idea. And this is like a chef can learn 100 different recipes and switch from one to another. He learned how to cook. He's a good chef. But then the robot, you have to tell the robot how to cut. So how you pick the 10 first recipe, how you pick the 20 recipes, how you say these recipes in this condo, but in schools, this is the other recipes, and how you train, you have to cook yourself. You have to talk to your customer.
And that's it. And then you come up with the menu and you see exactly what's possible. So it's really working well. And this, they were, I think, influenced by Eric Ries, but also this, famous Paul Graham essay, do things that don't scale. And these things don't scale. The CEO will not do this one day. The CRO will not do it.
I'm pretty sure you don't want to do that for his entire life.
And
but
so
if you have passion, go ahead.
So that's it. And this notion, which, they've been talking about it as their concierge model, And I think they've been, like, I think that's the appropriate phrase for it, because, there's also this kind of Wizard of Oz notion where you're doing like concierge and you're a little bit more like pretending. I think they've been sort of clear about what's happening with these users, and they literally show up there. So there's no, it's like, hey, I run this company. So this kind of concierge experimentation, you can just see the power of it. This doing very small scale experiments, directly interacting with the customers, and all the things you were describing, like forcing yourself to answer a bunch of questions that will be relevant further on. So I think that's, it came to mind when we started our conversation about this, and it just kind of shows that like these methods are widespread, and you just got to apply them, and you have to also be kind of willing to do this kind of stuff, which might seem like, oh wait, shouldn't I be doing something, I don't know, more impactful or with a longer term? And it's not always the case that you should do it this way, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, what is my unproven hypothesis, and how do I prove it out? And sometimes the answer is deliver food for a couple of people and see what works. So I think that's one example. I could give more, but it sort of, it goes to show, when the time is right. You
cannot predict success of a company, but you can predict a company that will not succeed because they don't have the right mindset. Actually, like if you just focus on the product and you don't listen to customers and you don't adapt, it can happen. Sometimes meteorite hit the earth, but it's not frequent event. It was so interesting. I'm sad to end this conversation, to be honest. I think you have so much other story to share.
Maybe we'll do it again, Sylvain. It's fun to, I've been running this product management group with a few others, and I'm always reminded, like I'm giving a talk tomorrow that, well, I just think it's the greatest job, and building products for people and figuring out how to like meet customers' needs, or meet needs they didn't even know they had. I just think it's such a joyful thing to be able to do. And so let's do it again.
So much negativity in the world, but when you see people trying to build things, then you get some hope. You see, whoa, there's things happening.
I agree.
There's great people trying to build stuff, and you have to encourage them, right?
Okay, so we'll do it again.
I thank you very much.
Thanks, Sylvain. Have a great day.
So for those who listen, we'll see you to the next episode. So bye, and thanks for listening.